Hello Horror Hounds, welcome back to what we're calling Occultober. For the month of October we're going to be looking at movies that deal with the occult, the left-hand path, Satanism, devil worship and the like. And this time round we are going to be looking at a Hammer film, Hammer Horror, the first Hammer Horror film I have talked about on this channel, I believe, from 1968. Based on the novel by Dennis Wheatley. The Devil Rides Out stars Christopher Lee. It's written by Richard Matheson and directed by Terence Fisher. So can someone please explain to me, because I don't understand it, why I can't really get on with this film? If you'll allow me, I'll just read directly from my notes here. It might explain it a little easier than me trying to paraphrase it. At the time this film was released, I mean, this might explain it. There's perhaps a disconnect from me watching it now to the time it was released. When it was released, in the same year Sympathy for the Devil appeared in the Rolling Stones album The Beggar's Banquet. The year before they'd released their Satanic Majesty's Request, and the same year, the year before the release of this movie, the Beatles had released Sgt. Pepper with Aleister Crowley on the front cover, on the album sleeve. Satanism and the like was much more prominent in the public eye than it is now. The Satanic Panic, if you will. I think audiences were much more willing to believe in that kind of stuff. I mean, I think that's maybe the reason that Dennis Wheatley, one of the reasons he was such a hugely successful, this will give you a clue to something else that's coming up in Occultober, but hugely successful, and then his popularity just sort of dropped off a cliff. And I think Hammer's thunder was stolen, even though they were making this in the late 60s and it came out in 68. The film is set in the late 20s, so even upon release it's sort of backwards looking. And then the same year Rosemary's Baby comes out, and a few years later The Exorcist, and a few years after that The Omen, and the devil is present and correct in the modern day in these movies. The sensibility of aristocrats in their drawing rooms with their Rolls Royces and their no real need to do a hard day's work, and probably have never done a hard day's work, and flying over from America in their own personal biplane that they pilot. Just see, the world moved on so quickly that this kind of aesthetic just seemed to be left so quickly. Now, if you love this movie, and I know that there are loads of people that adore this movie, there are loads of people that think that this is Hammer's best movie. Christopher Lee's certainly gone on record saying it's the favourite Hammer movie that he's ever been in. More power to you. Maybe you can explain to me, please, why you love it. But it just sort of leaves me cold. Wheatley presents a situation where the upper classes and the so-called ruling classes in every city are a hotbed of Satanism and occultism and devil worship, and coming just as it did after the First World War but before the Second World War, with the notion that it was these so-called elites that were fucking up the world and unleashing powers that they had no fucking business dealing with and didn't really understand upon the world. Could have been a fantastic commentary. The film was made with the hindsight of knowing that the Second World War came. The fascinating thing about the book is that it was written before the Second World War, but is essentially about a group of friends trying to stop the next World War. Wheatley little knowing or maybe he could see which way the wind was blowing, that's how things were going to be. When you're adapting the film, having come out of that, why leave that out? Okay, let's get to what was perhaps left out in a minute. My notes tell me the next thing to talk about is the book, which I've just finished reading. I've never read it. I've never read any Wheatley before. Pretty fucking racist. Yes, it was. What you have to understand is Wheatley was writing in a different time. There were different sensibilities. He probably didn't even realise that he was insulting. Blah, 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 blah. Fuck, I don't give a shit. There's some fucking awful stuff about race at the start of this book, and the whole fucking thing is, it really is a post-colonial British lecture on morality and right and wrong. And that's now Wheatley has said he wanted this band of heroes to emulate the Four Musketeers, and they appear in a series of books. And I've read the Musketeer books by Dumas. I love them. I absolutely adore them. I adore the romanticism of them. I can see what he was going for here, but the thing you have to realise about the Musketeers is that they were usually penniless. They were always down on their luck. They were always trying to scam the next meal and the next booze up of people, and that's sort of how they lived their lives. From scam to scam and meal to meal. These guys have never had to work a fucking day in their life. So to sit in their drawing rooms listening to their lectures about esotericism, it puts my fucking back up for a start. These characters don't have conversations, they have fucking lectures. And it really is Dennis Wheatley showing his workings. I've done all of this research. Don't just have Duke de Richelieu speaking your fucking research at someone else. So tell me, Duke, why did you use that swastika? Well, the swastika is not actually the symbol you think it is. It's much more ancient than that. Here's a little fucking history lesson about the swastika. Now, quite understandably, for a film adaptation, Richard Matheson has trimmed and made it leaner for budgetary reasons and for the sake of focus. It happens all the time. Unfortunately, I think what he chose to excise was pretty much the whole fucking raison d'etre of the entire story in the first place. Now in the film we get, where's Simon? Go to Simon's house. Oh, Simon's got himself in with a bunch of Satanists. So we have to stop that. We'll interrupt a Sabbat. The guy that's the head of the cult gets pissed off with us, so he's going to attack us. We're going to defend ourselves, and then everything comes out all right in the end. Whee! In the novel, all of that is a prelude to something grander, which, for the sake of budget, I mean, it is kind of a continent-spanning chase at the end in the third act, but the stakes as they're revealed in Wheatley's novel have a weight and a heft. They mean something other than just aristocrats and really well-to-do people gathering together in their library to try and not get attacked by giant tarantulas. So the Sabbat, for example, the first really big set piece in the novel, the first big set piece in the film, whereas in the novel it's set on Salisbury Plains, and there's a fantastic pre-dawn cleansing ritual at Stonehenge, which isn't in the movie, which, if you've seen the first video for Occultism, Night of the Demon, going and filming at Stonehenge just adds a history and a heft to the occultism at hand that kind of isn't here for me. For The Devil Rides Out, what is an orgiastic Sabbat in the novel that culminates with the appearance of Baphomet, as Christopher Lee says, the goat of Mendes, the devil himself. In this is a really overtly, understandably, but overtly conscious of the sensibilities, sort of laughable pastiche of a satanic orgy, with the silly robes and basically people dancing around like this, rather than, can I be frank, straight out fucking, before the goat of Mendes, Baphomet, appears. It's all faintly ridiculous rather than orgiastic. Even that said, there are some tingles there. The sacrifice of the goat is troublesome. Even that does twang some nerves for me still. The appearance of Baphomet, I saw it at a young age. It was very I was very impressionable, and it did make an impression on me. It did send a shiver down me. You very rarely see the devil in these kind of movies. In any kind of movie, usually when you see the devil, it's kind of a joke. The Devil's Advocate, Al Pacino. Hoo! I'm Satan. Ooh, ooga booga. I mean, this is a proper devil. I mean, modern sensibilities might look at it now and scoff and see a man with a goat head on, but the weird sort of enigmatic smile that they've carved into that goat's head, and the way it turns slowly, sitting cross-legged on the plinth and surveys everyone before it, I think that's genuinely creepy. So that, coupled with the goat sacrifice, it starts to win me over. Probably the most famous sequence in the film, the most lauded sequence in the film, and a sequence that really works in the book, is the circle. The heroes inside the circle trying to fend off the attacks from Makato. I've not even called the villain his name. Makato's famous line after he visits the Eatons and gets kicked out: "I shall not be back, but something will." So Christopher Lee draws this circle with Kabbalistic symbols around it, lights the candles. Whatever you do, do not leave the circle. And again, compression for time as necessary in the film. When you read it in the book, it does take all night. It does wear them down. You can feel it. The slow ratcheting of tension. It kind of happens a lot more quickly in the film. It's still quite effective, but what was an appearance in the book of a sort of formless, fleshy sack, completely alien, sentient thing, has to be now a tarantula made to look really big. I suppose there was no way to do a sort of fleshy, formless sack then without it looking ridiculous. Probably not until the likes of Bob Bottin and The Thing and Hellraiser and stuff like that could flesh be shown in that way. But as it is, we get a fairly obviously superimposed tarantula, and then after that, the Angel of Death in the book, which is obviously there's no budget in a book, but the sort of the footage of the rearing horse played forwards and then backwards and then forwards and then backwards. I mean, even for eyes of the time, that must have looked like nonsense. Christopher Lee gives it his absolute best. He plays a straight back throughout this entire film. He absolutely believes in these terrible forces, and my God, he does his absolute rock solid best to make you, the audience, believe in them as well. He said in the past that he would actually like the film to be remade with him in the same role, but with the money and the technology available now to do those special effects. So even he conceded that was a weakness of the film, and so it is. Who am I to argue with Christopher Lee? the effects are rubbish. So what's lost for time and budget in the film that's in the novel? Makato is after an artifact called the Talisman of Set, which is actually a mummified phallus, the mummified penis of Osiris, folks. So, all right, they wouldn't have had to have had it as a penis in the film, but some kind of Ooga Booga medallion thing, that's fine. But in the book, everything that Makato is doing is to find someone who was born at a time when the stars were in the right alignment, so he can perform a ceremony, so that he can find out where the Talisman of Set was hidden. And all of this, the Sabbat, the attack on the heroes and everything, to get to Simon, the friend that they're trying to save, is all to find the location of this thing. And when the film ends, is pretty much more or less where the book takes off, because if he obtains the Talisman of Set, that will give him the power to call forth the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and the world will see another world war. How very, very prescient. And why would you, in a film made in 1968 where you know that's exactly what would happen, why would you lose that? I know that they don't want to go on a chase to France and eventually to Greece, to a dilapidated monastery where the talisman is set. Right around that, have that. That's the engine of the story. And with hindsight in 68, making it an allegory of trying to stop evil men with a purpose from unleashing hell upon the world. Why would you take the teeth out of the story and present all the drawing rooms and the pentagrams and the goat-headed men and just take the engine out of the car? I have to say, reading the novel before rewatching the film has lessened the film in my eyes. Maybe if I hadn't have read the book, I'd have enjoyed the film more for what it is. But knowing that there's a whole act, a third act, which is the fucking point of the story, is just completely gone, does reduce the film for me, I'm afraid. That said, let's end on some good. Christopher Lee's fucking excellent. I mean, that is not going to surprise anyone, really, is it? Like I said before, he plays a straight wicket. I'm sure he enjoyed playing a hero. It's great to see him in the role of the hero, even though, like the Duke in the novel, he does tend to lecture people. Leon Green as Rex Van Ryn is actually awful in the film, but luckily Christopher Lee pretty much gets to shout at him throughout the entire thing and call him a damned fool for making mistake after mistake after mistake. Leon Green never really steps up. The other tip of the hat has to go to Charles Gray. Where is he? He's on the cover here. Most famous as Blofeld, I'm sure everyone will agree. The character of Makato is based on Aleister Crowley, and this guy really fits the bill so well. Given that his character actually doesn't have that much to do apart from look menacing and unleash sort of special effects and hypnotically control other people to do things, Charles Gray just plays an absolute blinder. You buy every single second that this charming villain is capable of such horrors. There's a scene where Rex and Tanith, the girl that he's fallen for and is trying to save, are driving away, but she's under Makato's influence, where she just looks in the mirror of the car and you see Charles Gray's eyes in the mirror and he's speaking just to her with his hypnotic influence. It's so creepy. That's probably my favourite bit of the movie. Such a simple little effect, but so well done and so eerie. So absolute props. There's Christopher Lee on the cover. It's not often that you'll have a film with Christopher Lee in it where he's not on the cover of the fucking film. This scene, all the promotional stuff with Charles Gray, sort of groping and about to sacrifice Tanith never actually happens in the movie. But the fact is that in the movie he's actually at the end trying to sacrifice a little child, and there's absolutely no way that they could have put any of that on the promotional material without the film being outright fucking banned. The ending of the film is pulled out of its ass. There's absolutely no explanation why the mother starts to recite this kind of stuff. It is all explained in the book, and the time reversal and stuff. I mean, it's a weakness of the story in the book. There is a sort of, and it was all a dream ending, sort of, but not really. And it's sort of, but not really there in the film as well. It's just that because the whole chase portion of it's been taken out, it gets to the same point as the end of the book, but without any reason that one of the characters just suddenly starts saving the day, and for really no reason. Tell me why I'm wrong if you love this, but for nostalgia value and the shivers I got from it when I saw it as a child, I'm glad I revisited it. To see Christopher Lee as the hero, really giving it his all, I'm glad I revisited it. Charles Gray is the MVP of this film, most valuable player, absolutely by a country mile. Him and Niall McGuinness in Night of the Demon, which I reviewed previously, I think we're going to have to go an absolutely long way to try and beat them as occult villains in any of the rest of the movies we've got for Occultober. But let's see how we get on with that, shall we? Rock on!